好唔好睇啊？
好。
咁不如我哋掌聲歡迎導演 Robin。大家幾多個係第一次睇嘅？First time.
Oh my god.
Second, two times.
Two times.
You asking?
Yeah. The last screening we did, there were people who'd been here 5 times, so some of you have some catching up to do. But yeah, thank you so much for coming. This is my first feature-length film, my first attempt. So it's amazing that this is playing in Hong Kong cinemas. Something I never thought would happen. So thank you all for coming down and supporting the film. Thank you.
好難喊啊你 Anyone cry? Yeah. Oh. Do you have tissue paper? 趁導演喺度，有冇朋友想講啲感受？睇完之後或者拍攝嘅嘢，佢導演可以分享或者問嘅問題。So feel free to ask any questions while Robin is here. Okay, great.
Hello, I do really love the film and all the way you to produce it and to film it. And I would like to know, because it's a very tight time with 72 hours or maybe even less. So how do you plan it and ready for it? And maybe how many cameras you have used to plan for the whole film to take all the shots you need, because there's no second time. So yes, so how do you prepare and plan for those or stuff for filming all those runners?
Yeah, very good question. The logistics of filming this film was probably one of the hardest parts. Before the event happened, I was probably filming with them 6 months before. So interviews, training runs, going to the podcasts. And so on these training runs that I would do with them, they would do the whole of the Macklehouse. Some of them would do the whole of the Wilson Trail, Hong Kong Trail. So as I was filming that, I was also learning about where is the best to film. So for example, if they're doing the Macklehouse Trail, I knew that Tai Mo Shan, if you go over the back, would be really nice. So during one of their training runs, I would go there, film there, but at the same time, I'm also thinking, okay, what camera works best here? Is a drone going to be best? Is a tripod with a long lens going to be best? Or is running with them with a gimbal going to be best? So the whole planning of it was about 6 months of, I did most of the trails all for myself and figuring out where I want to be for making Hong Kong look great, the trails, but then also locations where I know the runners are going to be giving me emotions. So checkpoints where they're going to slow down and be able to talk to the camera, or even moments where I know they're going to be struggling. So maybe where they give up, like the MTR, that could be a place, so let's make sure there's a camera there. So pre-production was really, really challenging, but it's where we sort of came up with all the locations. During the filming, we had 4 cameramen who were there for the entire 3 days, and then we had about 12 in total that were there for the 3 days. So some people would just be there for 1 day, some would be there for 2 days, some just even a few hours. And the first day was relatively easy because they're quite close. So you can put different groups of people across the whole of the Macklehouse Trail, and when the runners come past the film crew, they can just hike back down and move to the next location. But there's another crew waiting for them. But when you get to day 2 and day 3, that's when all the runners are all over the place. So the strategy has to change because you can't do the same leapfrog idea. So we would have a few people who would just stay in the same place all day. So for example, there was one cameraman who stayed on the MTR all day, just going back and forth, filming them all as they came. We would have someone at Sheko there, so as they arrive in Sheko, the camera can film them, interact with them. But then also they wear GPS trackers, mainly for safety, so if they were to go lost, then we can call them up and tell them they've gone the wrong way. But that also helps us understand where they are. So we have this huge database, big spreadsheet of estimate times of where they're going to be and when they're going to be there. But if they are a bit faster or slower, then we can look at where they are, we can find out where our camera crews are, and then be like, okay, we don't need 2 people here like originally planned, let's move one of them to this location. So a lot of it when you get to the second and the third day is looking at the GPS and just moving people around. You still stay in the places where you want to film, but the timings will change. So that just becomes really, really complicated. And then also, because me and 3 others had to do it between the whole 3 days, when you get to the third day, I think I had 2, maybe 3 hours of sleep in the back of a car and lying in the front of the green post box. I slept there for an hour. And so you're trying to make these decisions on the final day, but you just don't know if you're right or not. You're always second guessing, even though you have the plan in front of you, you're just like, is this the right decision? You know, you're not sure. So yeah, logistically, it becomes quite challenging.
佢答到你問題，所以佢之前嘅準備同埋計劃非常之周詳，因為佢現場嘅狀況自己都唔夠瞓，所以有少少都係難嘅。所以出到一套咁樣嘅 documentary 咧，我覺得大家真係再俾多啲掌聲咯。希望第二位觀眾有咩問題？
Well, thank you for this great movie, Robin. We actually work at the Hong Kong Golf Club. We know about Ben. So we actually watched it because of Ben. I would like to know, filming a documentary, actually, the most difficult part is like you have got a lot of things to explore. So, what is your standard of picking your main interviewees? Have you ever regret that you didn't explore more on Jackie? Thank you.
So before the event started, Andre told everyone that was participating that year that we would be filming, and who would like to be part of the film and who wouldn't be part of it. So there's a few characters who are not shown in the film because they just didn't want to be filmed. So there's that reason to begin with. But then everyone else we interviewed. So we interviewed everyone beforehand because with something like this, you don't know what will happen. You don't know which stories are going to be the most interesting or which characters are going to be the most diverse. So we filmed everyone interviews before the event. And in some ways you could get an understanding, even in those interviews, which characters will be the most different. So for example, when we interviewed Chang, we had just done a series of interviews where a lot of the runners were very serious in their tone. And then we met Chang, and one question he's already swearing, he's already like joking and making everyone laugh. So we're like, okay, his character's so different that we have to include him. So in some ways, in just in those interviews, you know who you want to choose, but then you never know what will happen during the event. So of course, Pong becomes such a big highlight because when we filmed him, it was 3 weeks before the event, and he met us in crutches. And so we were thinking there's no way he is going to even start. But we're here, let's do the interview and see what happens. And then, he has this incredible story, so how can you not put that in? In terms of Jackie, as described in the film, he was on the waiting list. So he wasn't meant to be, so there were international runners coming, but because it was the COVID year, they couldn't. So Jackie only came in 3 weeks before the start of the event. And at that point, we kind of didn't really have the resources to be able to film more people. It's Jackie's story. But in a way, it kind of was even better because he was so unexpected in every way. That you saw in the film, Andre, when Jackie even runs off from the post box to start Lantau, Andre says, and Jackie is on sub-finisher time, not 50. So when he arrived at the green post box, I did definitely think, I was like, oh man, why did this happen? Like, he's ruined the story. But at the same time, I was like, okay, this is not a bad thing at all, but how can I incorporate it into the film? So of course, interview him straight away. But then even at the post box, I had that whole concept of don't show him for the whole film until that one moment, because that's how it felt for us when we were filming it and everyone watching, that's how it felt. So that's how I wanted to edit it as well. And it kind of gives the film a bit of a feature film, a narrative film, where everyone is kind of not reaching their goals. So Salomon can't do it, Soames can't do it. So as an audience, you're just like, no one's doing it. And so you're in that low point, and then all of a sudden Jackie just comes and brings you right back up. So it has this really cinematic feel to it. So while I didn't explore him that much before, I don't regret it at all, because his story just became, that was his story, the underdog story coming out of nowhere. So yeah, and in terms of other people, not so much. We didn't have the opportunity to, and I feel like the characters that we did feature in the film were so interesting, so diverse. They all have their own stories, and so yeah, I think we picked the right ones.
I think it's just like life, right? You don't know what to expect and what to come, and then you flow with it, and you make this.
Yeah.
Thank you. 我哋做一個快問題，因為我哋要下一個 show 要開。
Hello. Have you got inspired by or motivated by the runners, and do it yourself, or are you put off by the challenge?
More put off than anything, yeah. No, I'm not a long distance runner. I trail run, but the longest I've done is 20K in part of a race. I've hiked for longer distances, and I've done multi-day, hiking trips and things like that. But doing this sort of long distance thing is not really for me. However, my background is action sports, so I used to film ski movies, so like the Red Bull type stuff. So I was always really into these extreme sports, action sports. And coming back from these ski trips, I was missing the mountains, and my older brother started trail running at the time. So then I was like, oh, let's go and make a film about trail running, because being back in the mountains. So that's how all of this was born. And even though it's not what I do, the fact that it's an extreme sport, I love everything to do with those kind of things. So if it's rock climbing, mountain biking, skiing, snowboarding, skateboarding, that's what I love. And this is just another form of an extreme sport. So that's what drew me to it.
Okay, let's take a group photo. Do you want to go to the 11 between the two good-looking chaps?